None of my neighbors want me to film. I need to move. The world is conspiring against me. Film this video. Whoop! I am so sorry. I just sat on his head. This happens like 10 times a day where he's under a blanket and I can't tell that he's there and I sit on him. Oh my god, you'd think I would learn to look where I sit. I'm very sorry, dude. I just want to preface this now that this is a chaotic book haul. I don't know, my neighbors are doing something weird. Are you done? No. Nobody wants me to film right now. All right, let's ignore everybody around me. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you hear any of my neighbors, we're just ignoring them, okay? We're ignoring them, we're moving on. Nobody wants to be quiet right now. There's so much noise going on around me. Today, we're gonna be doing a book haul. I have a lot of books here that I've purchased in the past, well, since my last book haul. I would say like half of them are horror, and then the other half are romance. There's some mysteries, but I'm really in my what am I trying to say? Horror era. No, I'm not in my horror era. What am I trying to say? Horror era. Horror era. I'm in my horror era. Why was that so hard to say? I'm in my horror era right now. Very different from my horror era. During Summerween, I read a lot of the horror that I had left on my TBR, so I've been like stocking up again, preparing for October, because y'all know in October I like to go hard for the spooky season. So a lot of these are horror, a lot of romance, a lot of really great books. Let's just get into the haul. So we'll start with all the horror that I've bought. Firstly, I have 3 books, all by the same author, and that is Kingfisher. I've read all of these already. So we have What Moves the Dead. This is a reimagining of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. It was great, super spooky vibes. If you liked Mexican Gothic, but you want that in a more condensed story with like none of the excessive plot elements, just like straight to the point, spooky vibes right away. This was amazing, I loved it. Then we have 2 books that I've already read and I already own versions of. I have the US versions of both of these books, but I just loved the UK versions as well. I had to get them. I very rarely buy like multiple covers of books, but I've just been loving Kingfisher so much. These covers were beautiful, I had to get them. So we have Nettle and Bone, which this is a fantasy book that is amazing. Quest fantasy, strange cast of characters who come together to break a curse and kill an evil king. It is amazing and I really like this cover. I mean, I like the US cover too, but this one's just like awesome. It also has the demon chicken on it, so very excited to have another copy of that. And then one of my favorite Kingfisher books, The Hollow Places. This was actually the first one that I ever read and it's what set me on this course of like obsession. And I love this cover. I think I like this one even better than the US version. This one's just like, the creepy vibes are awesome. Excited to have that. My Kingfisher collection is growing. Then I got 2 water-based horror books, which I think of all like the horror subgenres, water and space are like 2 of my favorites because they actually terrify me. I'm scared of the ocean, I'm scared of space. So I love water horror. This first one is From Below by Darcy Coates. On my Patreon Discord, a lot of my patrons have been talking about Darcy Coates, so I've been wanting to get into her books. She has so many of them, but this one recently came out and it sounds amazing. Okay, let me read you the synopsis and tell me this does not sound like my perfect horror. Years ago, during a routine voyage, the SS Arcadia vanished without a trace. Though a strange, garbled emergency message was broadcast, neither the ship nor any of its crew could be found. 60 years later, its wreck has finally been discovered more than 300 miles from its intended course. Cove and her dive team have been granted permission to explore the Arcadia's rusting hull. Their purpose is straightforward: examine the wreck, film everything, and if possible, uncover how and why the supposedly unsinkable ship vanished. Like, it's a crew going to film this lost ship that sank, and they have to dive down underwater. They have limited oxygen, and the ship is slowly closing in around them. Like, claustrophobic horror is so great. And I also love any horror that's like about some sort of expedition crew. I feel like this is a combination of Dead Silence and Into the Drowning Deep, which are 2 books that I love. This is like at the top of my TBR. And then the other water one is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This is also the UK cover, which I liked this one way better than the US cover. It just has more of like this creepy vibe to it. This is about a woman whose wife is finally returning from this deep sea mission that went wrong, but she's starting to realize that something is very different about her wife. It might not even be her wife. There's just something like wrong about her. It sounds very creepy. I don't know any more about it other than that. It's kind of a shorter book, so I'm excited to read it and figure out what it's all about. It sounds like it's gonna be really weird. Okay, then I have 3 that are like possession horror. First one is The 7 Visitations of Sydney Burgess by Andy Marino. It says that it's a possession with a sinister twist about a woman who fights off a masked intruder in her home, and he knocks her unconscious, and then she wakes up in the hospital and the police are telling her a completely different story than what she thinks happened. They're telling her that the intruder is dead in her home and she killed him, but she doesn't remember that happening. It sounds interesting. Kingfisher also blurbed it. So I am reading this for a secret reading vlog that I'm very excited for. Then we have Mary, An Awakening of Terror by Nat Cassidy. So this is about a middle-aged woman who things have been like changing lately with her body. She's been getting like body aches and hot flashes, and she keeps hearing these voices in her head telling her to do terrible things. And then she's seeing like flashes of these really gruesome murders, like almost like they're memories or visions. And she realizes that they are echoes of this infamous serial killer who might be possessing her. I don't know, this sounds really cool. It says that it blends Midsummer and American Psycho, which sounds awesome. Then I got We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. This is the last Grady Hendrix book that I have to read, and I'm so excited for it. First of all, can we talk about this edition? This book has a few different covers, and I love all of the different versions of this book, but I think this one is my favorite. And it also has black sprayed edges. Amazing. And then on the inside, it has all this like demonic writing. So this is about a heavy metal band. They were on the brink of success, but then a lead singer embarked on a solo career and like became very famous all on his own and like left the rest of the band behind. Now the lead guitarist is working at a motel, and a lot of very weird things start happening to her, and she realizes that the lead singer might have sacrificed her soul to the devil in order for him to become famous. So she brings the band back together to track him down. It sounds so good. I really have been loving Grady Hendrix. The last book that I read from him, My Best Friend's Exorcism, I gave 5 stars. So I'm very excited for this. It sounds really cool. And I definitely think like aesthetically, this is like one of my favorite books. Next up, we have a small category, but one of my favorite categories, and that is pink horror. Horror with pink covers. I love it. I will buy every single one of them. So the first one that I have is Queen of Teeth by Haley Piper. Let me tell you guys the bonkers plot that this book has. It's about a girl who discovers teeth in her vagina. She's now being hunted down by one of the most powerful corporations in America. She assumes that these, vag teeth are a side effect of a rare genetic condition caused by alpha beta pharmaceutical, but then that pharmaceutical company is trying to hunt her down and cover their tracks, and her situation starts to worsen when her condition sprouts horns, tentacles, and a mind of its own. This sounds crazy. Like, I cannot wait to read this. It sounds so good and wild. Oh my god, I literally just opened a page and the first word I saw is vagina monster. I can't wait to read this. And then the other pink horror that I got is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This is my Patreon book club book for this month. And I'm very curious to see how I feel about this because I've had super mixed opinions about Sarah Gailey's books. I've read almost all of them. Some have worked for me and some really haven't. But this sounds really good. It says perfect for fans of The Haunting of Hill House, about a woman whose father is a convicted serial killer and she is returning to her childhood home for the first time. The past comes back to haunt her. That's all I know about it. This cover I'm obsessed with. Like, this is such an effective horror cover. I love it. Like the bubblegum pink, the dripping blood from the house. 10 out of 10 for this cover. My last little category of horror are just like random ones. Didn't really know where they fit. I also don't fully know if all of these are like strictly horror or if they're like horror thriller. I don't know. So the first one is The Children on the Hill. This book sounds amazing. It's inspired by Frankenstein. So it takes place in two timelines. One of them is in 1978, following the psychiatrist at a treatment center. But aside from that, she raises her two grandchildren. And then one day she brings home a child to stay with the family who just doesn't seem normal. There's something off about this child. And then it also takes place in 2019, where we're following a girl named Lizzie Shelley, who is the host of a popular podcast called Monsters Among Us, and she's traveling to Vermont, where a young girl has abducted and a monster sighting has the town in an uproar. I don't know, this sounds really good. A monster horror inspired by Frankenstein. I've never read anything from this author, so we'll see. I'm excited about it. The next one is one that I have already read. It is Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valenti, and I don't know how to describe this or pitch this at all. It's very weird, very short. Honestly, it's like just best reading it without any kind of synopsis. But what I can say about it is that it's about this woman who has a perfect life. She has a perfect husband. She lives in a perfect neighborhood. Everything is just perfect until it isn't. And that's all I'm gonna say. It's really weird. I loved it. And then the last horror that I have is Just Like Mother, and this is about a cult. It says the last time Maeve saw her cousin was the night she escaped the cult in which they were raised, and after 2 decades, her cousin suddenly reappears. I don't know much more about it. I've heard that it's really weird and wild and gets crazy, so I don't want to know too much more about the plot, but I really, really like cult books. All right, so that was all the horror. I have 5 books here that are kind of like in between genres. The first one, this could be a romance. I'm not too sure because I haven't looked that much into it, but it is funny you should ask. Okay, a couple things. This might have been a cover buy because pink is my favorite color. So if a book has a pink cover, I don't care what it's about, I'm interested. I've heard that this is inspired by Chris Evans, which also piqued my interest. Basically, this follows this writer who is hired to write a profile for this up-and-coming actor who is gonna be the new James Bond. So she spends the weekend with him to do this interview, and then that interview ends up getting like really popular, and the actor becomes this huge movie star. So now it's 10 years later. She just got a divorce and she's back in Los Angeles. That actor's PR team requests that she do a follow-up interview now, like a 10 years later kind of interview. And they meet up again. She's always had a crush on him. I don't know, it sounds really cute. Someone in the comments, let me know if this is like a romance book or if it's more like just kind of contemporary with a little bit of romance, because I'm not sure. I couldn't tell the vibe. The next one is So Happy For You by Celia Lasky. I have no idea what genre this is really. If it's like thriller or like dark comedy. It's about this woman who is attending her best friend's wedding where she's the maid of honor, but then a series of ominous occurrences lead her to think that someone on the bridal party is out to get her. All right, we moved into the office. Hopefully it's not as loud in here. I just haven't been filming in here lately because it gets really hot in this room. So they've been drilling now for like an hour, so sacrifices must be made. I don't even remember what book I left off talking about. So Happy For You? Was this what I was talking about? Yeah, I've heard really good things about it. I've heard that the main character is like a little bit, Loki, don't flash them your butt. I've heard that the main character is like unlikable. Okay, what are you doing? I'm excited. I feel like this is gonna be like a good summer read. Okay, the next book that I have is The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, who is the author of Station 11, which I loved. This says that it is a story of art, time, love, and plague that takes the reader from Vancouver Island in 1912 to a dark colony on the moon nearly 500 years later, which sounds amazing. I have been told that I should read The Glass Hotel before I read this because there might be like some sort of connection. So I definitely want to do that soon because this sounds amazing. Then I have 2 kind of like cozy, murdery, mystery books. The first one is The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray, which is a murder mystery dinner party with all of the Jane Austen characters, and Mr. Wickham is not invited. However, he turns up at the party dead, and so they're trying to figure out who is the murderer. It sounds like it's either gonna be like my favorite thing or I'm gonna hate it. And then the other one is Dial A for Aunties. This is about a woman who accidentally kills her blind date, and then her 4 meddlesome aunties come and help her cover it up. Sounds super fun, kind of gives me Finlay Donovan vibes. Okay, now moving on to all the romance books. I have 3 historical romances. The first one is Nobody's Princess by Erica Ridley. This is the 3rd book in her Wild Winchester series, which I have been loving, and I'm so excited for this one. Then we have Up All Night with a Good Duke by Amy Rose Bennett, which is about this woman who by day is a finishing school teacher and by night she is a gothic romance writer. And then there's this duke who is widowed and everyone thinks that he murdered his wife, so nobody wants to marry him, but he needs a wife and they meet each other. I've never read anything from this author, but it sounds really good. And then the last historical that I got is The Queer Principles of Kit Webb by Kat Sebastian, who I've read a couple of books from and really enjoyed them. She writes primarily queer historical romances, and I've heard really good things about this book and the sequel, and the covers are so cute. I'm not the biggest fan of like illustrated covers, however I think that the cover of this and the second one are just adorable. Okay, the next one that I have is a contemporary, and that is The Lawyer by Marnie Mann. And this is about a woman who meets this guy on a rooftop bar and they have a one-night stand, and then the next time she ever sees him, she realizes that he is her sister's entertainment lawyer, and he has a proposition for her to make her a famous actress. I've heard that this is very steamy, so I'm excited for that. And then the last stack that I have here are all fantasy romances. The first one is an arc. This comes out in September, and it is Ledge by Stacey McEwen. This says that it is an epic fantasy with a sizzling enemies to lovers romance. That's the only synopsis I have on here, so I don't know any more about the plot. It's like a wintry fantasy, so I feel like this would be a great book for December and the winter time. But yeah, this comes out in September. That's what the cover looks like. Then I have The Inadequate Heir by Danielle L. Jensen. This is the 3rd book in the Bridge Kingdom series, and this one is following a new couple. And this book is so much bigger than I thought it would be, but I'm very excited to read it. It has these embossed hardcover and then artwork on the inside, so I'm very excited to get to this. I don't know when I will because it's long, but I loved the first 2 books, so I'm excited to get back into this world. And then the last book that I got is The Undying King by Grace Draven, who I've read a bunch of books from and I've loved all of them. She's one of my favorite fantasy romance authors, so I'm excited to read this one. I've never heard of this before, so I don't really know much about it. It's about the Undying King who is imprisoned by a sorceress wife in a city out of time and place, and he has passed into legend. Few believe in him, and fewer would set their hopes on his mercy. But Imogen has no choice. To break the curse that's isolated her since birth, she'll find the Undying King and answer his secrets with her own. Very excited for that. So those were all of the books that I've bought recently. It was a lot. This video took me forever to film because of all of the interruptions, but we made it. We did it. We got there. Definitely let me know in the comments, out of all the books that I hauled, which one you're the most excited to hear my thoughts about. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye!